Jurassic Park 3, 2001. When their son gets stranded on a hostile tropical island, the Kirby family jumps into action. They waste no time putting together the best rescue team money can buy. Lies, deceit, digging through dino dung. The Kirbys will stop at nothing to rescue their child. But once landed, the team quickly finds that the welcoming party is far from spineless.
Okay.
Every time I'm like, I'm going to go right into a conversation, and then I'm just laughing because it's just like, yep, all right, you got me. Okay. You bring up the rescue party on this one. Am I way off base to say that essentially this is the same plot from Jurassic Park 2 with just less people?
No.
Like, you've got a small team of people going in to rescue somebody who's on the island. Bad things happen. They have to try and get off.
No, because Ian Malcolm's there to rescue people.
Everybody else was there to document.
Everybody else is there to look at dinos. Nobody in this movie is there to look at dinos except for Alan Grant.
I was going to say he thinks he's there to look at dinosaurs.
And I guess Billy. I guess Billy to some extent, right? Actually, I don't really know why Billy's there, to be honest.
Yeah, Billy's there so everybody else goes there. That was it. That was the one line of dialogue. They're like, let's just introduce a new character.
Yeah, super weird.
That in fact, the dynamic between Grant and Billy was really weird for me. They have weird interactions, and it gets worse and worse as it goes. And then Grant like leaves him off with something kind of mean, and then you think Billy's dead. Like I genuinely thought Billy was dead. And then at the very end, he's not. And Grant goes up and talks to him. He's like, "Oh, at least you got my hat." And I was like, "Really? Like, you were so upset. You popped off like you were a jerk to him." And I did not like the interactions between those characters at all. Billy didn't grow as a character. I don't think any of these characters really had much of an arc, to tell you the truth.
No.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. At the end of the movie, when they're on the helicopter and taking off, the pilot says, 6 souls on board. And if you count the people on board, there are 7. Because there's the 2 pilots, Grant, Billy, and the Kirby family.
So what's the problem? How they go wrong on this? Why do they say 6 and 6?
Billy was never supposed to live. They changed that. Okay. They changed that partway through, which is another big problem with this movie. Is they started filming before the script was even completed. They started production with one script, threw it all out, and started writing a whole nother script as production was being done. So there's all kinds of problems in this movie as far as I'm concerned.
I could feel this movie was rushed. Now, I actually went into this film thinking, I've seen Jurassic Park 3. I was like 15 minutes into the film before I was like, oh yeah, I have seen this. Like I couldn't, like it was such a forgettable film for me. Apparently the first, I couldn't remember anything. And then finally it was like, okay, I have seen this. Was this an epic, unforgettable movie for you? Or were you like me? Like this was pretty bad.
So I remember seeing this one in the theaters with a friend of mine back in, I guess it was 2001. And I can tell you 2 parts of this movie very clearly. And that is there's pterodons in this movie, the flying dinosaurs, pterodactyls, pterodons, whatever they were, and the Spinosaurus. And that's literally it. I guess Alan Grant is in it. That's all I remember. I don't remember the plot. I forgot why they were on the island. I forgot the little kid on the hang glider. Everything about this movie was completely forgettable to me. And honestly, it's 24 years ago since I've seen this one. It's probably going to be at least another 24 before I see it again. I don't see any reason to go back to this one now that we've done it as part of the franchise. I think I'll go back to Jurassic Park 1. I might even go back to Jurassic Park 2. I don't think there's any reason to come back to Jurassic Park 3. Spoilers for my score at the end of the movie, I guess. But
I mean, unless Jurassic World wows me, because I think I've only seen the first one of Jurassic World. Whenever I want to get my indulgence in dinosaurs, why would I choose anything but Jurassic Park? There's no reason to watch number 2 or 3 in my mind. And the Jurassic Worlds, as far as I know, probably aren't great, but we'll see when we get there. If I want some dinosaurs, I'm going to just watch Jurassic Park because it's so good. And then this comes along and proves that so many times over.
Now, the biggest change that I saw in this movie is like the entire tone of this is drastically different from especially the first one, but even a little bit the second one, where the music when this movie starts off, the way it cuts out, even like the 3 slashes across the name, like this movie comes across as a horror movie right from the very beginning. Whereas I think some of the magic of Jurassic Park, the first one, was that there's a lot of whimsy to it. There's a lot of magic to it outside of just the dinosaurs attacking. The dinosaurs attacking are fun, but the entire movie is epic and it's cool. Whereas this one, they're just like, let's just get to the dinosaurs attacking things as fast as possible. All we're going to do is big dinosaur fights. Let's just make this scary, or try to make it scary right off the hop. And I think it does the opposite, because I don't care about any of these characters. I don't know why they're in the positions they're in. And it just feels ridiculous. Did either of you feel the same way?
Yes. I don't know if this was meant to be a horror movie specifically. I think more of an action movie than anything, because the pacing is just fire from the get.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Will's.
There's like no time. Oh, did I freeze?
Oh, well, a little squeak in my ear there. Yeah, I gotta agree with Will. The pacing is super fast. I don't know about a horror, but definitely action nonstop. And they didn't do enough character building or allow me to care about these characters. Yeah. The characters seemed really weak.
Even the characters that are returning, like Dr. Alan Grant in those first opening scenes where he's hanging out with Laura Dern at her house, something about him came across as really creepy. And I loved Alan Grant in the first movie, where she's talking to him and he's sitting in his car and he's just got this little smile on his face. And it's just like, ew, just go away, dude. Just get out of here. Like he just turned me off so hard on this one for a character that I already liked and an actor I already like. It was just like, oh, I don't feel good about that.
Everything about this movie seemed a bit forced, a bit rushed, kind of thrown together. It felt like, I don't know, they wanted to go back to the island and do more with Dr. Grant, because what we went with Malcolm last time, so it's back to Grant. And it felt like they were trying to get back to some of the original magic of Jurassic Park 1 in some ways, but they were way off the mark. And they threw it together with a pretty flimsy plot. I could have gotten behind this plot had they really fleshed it out, had they polished it, made it realistic. But like right from the get-go, like the Kirbys don't strike me as like industrial moguls with tons of money. I was like, this guy's a joke, like right from the start. And keep in mind, this is when I'm watching this, I still hadn't remembered that I'd seen this movie, so I really didn't even know. And I knew. I was like, this is bogus. Like I see this a mile away. Nothing really worked for me. It was just thrown together too fast.
One of the things that really bothered me is when we were talking about Jurassic Park, one of the things I praised it for is every scene that Alan Grant and Laura Dern's character, Ellie Sattler, were in, they were approaching it with a scientific mind. They were coming across things, they were instantly going into like, let's break this down mode. And then you've got these two people approaching them being like, hey, let's go back to that like horror island that you never want to go to. And he just goes, okay, like that Dr. Alan Grant from Jurassic Park would have looked into those people, I'm sure, before showing up on the island and be like,
he's writing
you work in a retail store?
check? Like, that's got to be a big check. When he, like the previous scene, he's
how
like,
is that not?
Nothing on this earth, not God on this earth, or whatever his line was, could ever get me to go back to that island. And then Mr. Kirby whips out his personal checkbook, which is bound to bounce, and just says, tell me a number. And he's like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah. That should have been such a massive red flag for him. And it just strikes me as so anti his character that he just goes, okay. Like, this is a guy who's having, it's not well shown, but this is a guy who's having PTSD attacks based off something that happened to him 8 years ago, or however long the timeline is in real life, or in the movie life, I guess. I don't see him going back to that island. I certainly don't see him going back to the island without looking into it more. And instead, he just kind of dopily gets on the plane. And then you see him on the plane. He's like, I guess if you look out on the left side, and they're all like talking jargon of landing and stuff. He's like, what's going on? Oh, dinosaurs are over there, guys. It's just like, they made him such a stupid character from what he was. And it really bothered me.
Yeah, I think the whole plot of this movie is based on everybody lying, everybody's character lying right out the gate. Grant stating he'll never go back to the island and then immediately reverting on that. The Kirbys pretending to be these really wealthy, well-to-do people just wanting to get their exotic vacation on seeing dinosaurs, which is all bubkiss. mercenaries who said they're like super well trained, that obviously if they're accepting checks without depositing them first to go on this, obviously you're not getting the best of the best. Plus, you know, how do the Kirbys know how to get the best mercenaries in town? They have no clue. So like the whole thing is bubkiss. The only honest character in the movie is Billy coming in, because he's like, oh yeah, this will be good for our dig, getting more money, and that would be great. I want to see dinosaurs. He's the only honest character in the whole movie,
and he ends up stealing some
eggs.
Choice
of the honest character is the one who directly lies to Alan Grant.
Yeah, exactly. But he lies later. Coming in, he's the only one. He's the only on above board character, which doesn't set up any character to be well liked or anything like that.
No.
And I guess the kid Eric, you know, there's nothing wrong with him, but
I will say I didn't think of it until just now. But you're right. The Kirbys wouldn't have gotten very good mercenaries, and so I do kind of like that they fall apart instantly. Like the second they get to the island, they're screaming and running like, get back on the plane! Like. That bothered me when I watched it. And then you mentioning, like, of course they hired shitty mercenaries. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm actually pretty on board with them, like, hiring poor mercenaries and the mercenaries acting poorly. Like, okay, that actually does connect a dot for me.
Yeah, it wasn't like the worst.
But at least it makes sense.
It didn't make for a great movie, but at least plot-wise it did make some sort of sense.
If you're the Kirbys, in a world where, I forget his character's name, but Pete Postlewaite exists, that's the person you find for this expedition, not Dr. Alan Grant.
Right, exactly. Somebody who could protect you when you're actually on the ground, not somebody who analyzes bones for a living.
For sure.
Or even look for Ian Malcolm, who's been there twice. At least he's got a good track record of getting off the island.
Yeah.
He's 2 for 2. But I don't know. It just seemed so run together. And as soon as I saw that the script was going through rewrites and not finished while they were filming, it really clicked a lot of the problems with this movie for me. I think the original script Spielberg kind of put forth because let's just be honest, Spielberg ruined this movie because he put dinosaurs in San Diego in the second movie, which was supposed to be the third movie. And he wanted to have his cake and eat it too and not direct the third movie at all. So instead, he left this movie on its own, being like, oh, what do you do? You could do a movie about Alan Grant, who's like living in the bush on these islands, researching the dinosaurs all by himself. And then the director, what's his name, Johnson or whatever, was like, I don't like that. Alan, there's no way Alan wants to be on this island. And then he puts him on the island anyway. It just didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. The whole thing was a
kid
roller
being
coaster.
there for 8 weeks bothered me. That seems like an extremely long time for that kid to stay on his own. I didn't have a problem with his child actor because he didn't have very many lines. Thank goodness. It was fine. But the ridiculous idea that he's going to be there for that long was stupid. So I didn't like his character. I didn't like the idea of this kid surviving off of chocolate bars for 8 weeks and collecting dino pee. I was waiting for that to come back around when he collected the Tyrannosaurus Rex urine, and there was nothing of it. They're like just making a joke out of it, and it was like, okay, whatever.
That bothered me for 8 different reasons, but yeah. The fact that they didn't bring it back in any way, and the fact like, how do you collect Tyrannosaurus pee in a world where you've got no instruments in which to do it? He's like, oh, don't even ask. I'm like, no, I would actually really like an answer to that. Like, what exactly?
Why bring it up?
Yeah, if you're never going to use it again, and it makes no sense how you did it, just don't.
From a director, from a scriptwriter perspective, why do you utilize that space in the film for useless information on a dumb joke when you could have used that information to help develop characters better?
Yeah,
it just,
the one you mentioned, the kid doesn't have very many lines. He actually has one of my favorite lines in the movie. It's a super small little thing, but I actually did like it as a mild character development thing, where he talks about, I read both your books. I liked the first one better. You used to like dinosaurs back then or something.
Yeah.
Like, just like showing that like even somebody reading your books can tell like you no longer feel the same way you do. You're in your 50s. You're way past the point of going back to school. So you kind of have to just keep going on the path you've chosen in life. But like, this does not mean the same to you that it used to. I was kind of like, that's kind of cool. It's just a little throwaway line, but it's like, I liked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it also kind of showed that Alan Grant was changed after being at the park and some of that magic dissipating because now there are dinosaurs. So him researching the bones isn't as impactful, and he knows it.
Yeah.
And so his writing is reflected in that. That was a good line. I also think, as a young person watching this movie, you would maybe relate to Eric and be like, yeah, if I was on that island, I could survive. That's me. I could do that.
I'd be dead so fast.
Oh, for sure. But like people, young kids are all I can do anything kind of thing. I think that's the whole purpose of that kid in this movie, aside from, obviously being the sole purpose this movie exists.
Yeah.
But for like people to relate, be like, yeah, I could survive amongst the dinosaurs. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Although again, this movie's so rushed, there's like no time to even contemplate that. You're just like, oh, we're on to the next thing. We're on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, it's just so fast.
Did any of you have any standout actors or even moments of acting that you thought were good? There was nothing that really took me away from the film. It was more about the writing that bothered me. As far as acting was concerned, everything was just kind of meh. Not bad, but definitely not good.
I mean, this movie's got not a ton. This movie has a pretty decent cast with like William H. Macy is fantastic. Tia Leone's decent. Sam Neill's quite good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as familiar with the other actors, but like in theory, those three should carry a movie pretty easily. And as you mentioned, like the writing is just so bad. They're given nothing to really do or say. The Kirbys are just arguing the entire time. Was the acting bad? No, not necessarily. But that doesn't make me like any of the characters more. Like,
yeah,
they did the best they could with what they have, which is such a cop-out answer, but it's the only thing I can really say, right? Like, none of them took me out of the film, but none of them brought me into it either.
Yeah, there's a saying that I'm going to butcher right now, that a good actor can only ever raise a bad movie script by like 1 grade. It could maybe bring it, or not even a grade, like a mark. You can bring a B- movie up to a B with good acting. But it all comes down to the rest of like everything has to be firing on all cylinders to make a good movie. So whether these actors are good or not is kind of irrelevant in the long run when the script is so bad. The pacing is like, it just felt like they were running to the bank because they knew that people were going to buy tickets to this, and the sooner it was over, the sooner they got paid. That's just what it felt like to me, because it was just like nothing to hold on to in this movie for me.
And it kind of felt like a lot of cheap thrills for me.
Yes.
All the sequences were like, we've seen this. At best, you're turning the volume up on this. Instead of just going with 2 Tyrannosaurus Rexes, they went with a bigger Tyrannosaurus Rex. I don't know what the name of the dinosaur was, but it battles a T-Rex and it takes it down with some effort. So it was slightly better than a T-Rex. Like they didn't even have like a real like T-Rex killer like we'll see in the later in the franchise. So they just kind of upped the ante in a few places, but they went for some just cheap thrills. They're constantly running the scene when the plane crashes and they're rolling it. Like this was obviously done in a studio with a bunch of wires and cables and machines and stuff like that. It was a neat sequence, but they kind of did it to death. And then as soon as they get done with that, they're running this way and then they're running that way and it's on to the next thing. And you don't have any time to absorb what you just experienced or account for like, we just saw another person die. Like in the opening sequence, they lose like 2 or 3 mercenaries, bam, 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 like right in a row. And you don't even have the chance to acknowledge the horror of that. They almost make it funny when somebody's, oh, please stop the plane. And the dinosaur comes and snatches them up. And it's almost comical. And it was just too much, too fast, and too poorly done.
I feel like a lot of this action, or whatever you want to call it, in this movie was done for comedy and kind of assuming the audience is just going to accept the cheap thrill and not think about it. And if you think about it for any length of time, you're like, well, that's just stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about, let's say, the boat at the very beginning where the 2 people just disappear and you're like, wait, what? Like the pterodactyls in this, like, okay, we see pterodactyls free in the second movie, but in this movie, they're theoretically all contained in the birdcage.
Correct.
So it's not a flying dinosaur that got them. So did a raptor jump on the boat, kill them, and jump off? Is there a sea monster we've never seen?
Well,
You're not
the
supposed to think about it. That's the whole point.
Spinosaurus could be. It's an aquatic dinosaur
That's
as
fair.
well, so it could have. But again, yeah, it's so ambiguous.
You're not supposed to think about it. You've got the raptor that's in the formaldehyde tank that knows to sit there and like hold a specific pose and not blink until it's ready to, and then it jumps out. You're like,
and how do you miss that thing standing on the other side of the tank as you're walking through?
Right.
Well,
they're all clear tanks. You can see him standing on the other side. It's like a fat guy hiding behind a lamppost. You can see him.
It's just like the Spinosaurus scene where they're like meeting at the fences.
Yes,
and they're like hugging each other at the fences, and the Spinosaurus is just behind half the group.
Yeah, the other have the phone, and the camera just pans over, and it's just standing there staring at him. Like, really? That was another. It was like a cheap thrill. It was like, come on, it's kind of funny, but it was so dumb.
In my headcanon, the Spinosaurus has been there for like 6 minutes, and he's just waiting for them to notice him. He's just like, come on, guys, I'm right here. And the phone starts going off. He's like, okay, cool. Now they see me? All right, now I can chase you. It was so ridiculous just standing there. And the Spinosaurus, this is one of the few things I remember from my original viewing. The Spinosaurus breaks through that fence like it's not even there, and they run inside a wooden door. And Spinosaurus goes, boop,
I saw that.
All right. And he leaves.
I think it was a metal door, but that door would not have held up the way he just walked through the fence.
But they did. They showed them locking like 6 different things, so you know it's strong.
Oh, yeah. Clearly starting that fence that held all the Tyrannosaurus.
Yeah. That thing's blowing through the wall of that building without problems. And that door ain't holding it. No,
not to mention, in The Lost World, they do mention that there's no fences on this island, and then we come across this fence anyway.
Yeah,
so it's like really odd, really odd. They just threw out whatever they wanted and took whatever they wanted.
And they were terrible at building things. When we get to the pterodactyl cage and they're like walking across all the beams, they're going up and down stairs, stuff's just falling off left and right. And I'm like, it's been like, what, 10 years since they built this thing? How's that so rusted off it's falling? The Titanic at the bottom of the ocean is holding together better than this thing.
Oh man!
You're not supposed to think about that. Where'd the T-Rex urine come from? Don't think about that. Like,
right?
You are. This is literally one of the like definitions of like turn your brain off, eat popcorn, enjoy. And the problem is,
I had trouble with the third part.
Enjoy. Exactly, it just never quite delivered on the enjoyment for me, at least. If you would love this movie, congratulations. What did you guys think about the raptors changing drastically from the first 2 movies to this one, to the point where they have a society and they're talking? They're like, you mentioned in the Alien Resurrection movie that 2 aliens having a conversation. This one, they literally have conversations with each other. They don't attack the people that stole the eggs.
Yeah, it's the exact same to
back, and they're just like, cool, we're peace. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a mirrored scene to me. They was the exact same. It played out the exact same way.
And him blowing through his little 3D printed whistle of their larynx or whatever it was. Like, I was like, you're just blowing through it. Like, it's not. It was so dumb. And that whole communication thing was just overblown and ridiculous. And then they handed the eggs back, and they're like, "Yeah, we're good now." And they walk off. Like, come on, that's no.
There's a couple of ideas in this movie that I think are decent, that are not explored enough or paid off enough. And one of them actually is that raptor larynx thing or whatever.
The communication, yeah.
Right. If they'd used that as like a duck call, like they're going to use it from a far distance away and they're just going to like attract them for some reason. Sure, I could get on board with something like that. But when you're standing directly in front of them and you're confusing the raptors, who are supposed to be so intelligent they could almost be like the primates of their generation, you're going to confuse them when they're looking at you blowing the whistle. No, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me. Also, like the PTSD that you see Dr. Alan Grant has, it looks ridiculous because there's the raptor on the plane, like Alan. So stupid. But Dr. Alan Grant having PTSD, I could have been on board with that if they did that properly. Like, that's not a bad idea. It just was so poorly implemented for me.
The other problem with it's like the only part of his PTSD that is ever shown. It doesn't ever come up again.
And it's played for a joke.
For me, it more felt like that scene, that dream sequence, was more about raptors being able to talk, because that's what's on his mind more than anything.
Okay.
Which also kind of feeds through the through line, which is I don't hate, but again, it was just so poorly done. And the whole them being able to converse and things was like, it was just so haphazardly put together. But by the end, you're just like, just Raptors, just eat them already. Just get this over with.
Yeah,
but instead they're like, okay, we got our eggs back. Now he's blowing into this weird conch. Now we hear choppers. We better leave. It's just like
they know what choppers are.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, aye. Also, how did they know where on the island these mother effers were?
That ending felt so cheap and like Deus Ex Machina, as you mentioned from the first movie. Like, it didn't. No wonder I have no recollection of that ending because it felt so thrown in there at the last second. Like they had, as you mentioned, probably multiple scripts and like, we don't know what to do.
It was ridiculous.
Throw the army at them. And the army did nothing. Like they just got out, stood there, everybody got on a plane, and they left. Like it's not even like they saved them from the Raptors.
Right? And he's out there shouting, and they're like, that's a bad idea. Going back to the beginning of the movie.
Joke.
Yeah. Making a joke there. I'm like, okay, why would you have a dude in a suit blowing a bullhorn when you have the Marines and the Navy on the beach? That wouldn't happen at all. And then they couldn't get the American embassy to do a dang thing about rescuing this kid, but he leaves this ridiculous voicemail through a toddler to Ellie, and she's able to get the Marines and the Navy to the beach where they're at in like hours.
Yeah,
it was so absurd. It was so ridiculously absurd.
It hurt a lot. It like honestly, just get rid of the UN line from earlier, just so it doesn't feel so like because maybe that's just it. Maybe the UN shows up and they're like, or sorry, maybe that somebody shows up on the island and UN's like, oh shit, we need to do something. But if you're gonna flat out tell us they will not do anything,
right?
And then you see the military show up in force, you're like, what? Like, I'm sorry, Dr. Alan Grant is not that important.
But they needed to know, like, we needed to know, why didn't you call somebody to help? Why did you fake this to get Grant here to do it? So we needed to know that the government isn't going to help you. But then why does the government come to their aid in the end? Because she calls them.
She's got a random husband. Why not make the random husband a colonel or something?
There you go.
Like, oh, there it is.
They do mention the husband works for something, and that was like I think the tidbit. I think the husband has the in with the military.
Okay.
It was like a quick scene over their dinner, so it's like almost a throwaway, but it's like the girl being a hacker in the first movie or the girl being a gymnast in the second movie. It was just like this throw in so that you can tie it back to the end and it all makes sense. But it's just brutal. Also, like the timing of Grant making the call could have been like so much earlier so that there was time for the military to show up, right? Like, why make it so compact that it just is unrealistic? I mean, it's a dinosaur movie.
The Lioness team couldn't get there that fast, and that's as good as it gets.
Yeah. Even if they brought the military team, okay, the movie's dumb. We're already fully convinced that it's stupid, right? Go full dumb. Like, just embrace it. Have the military show up and fight the Raptors and give me a scene with, like, SEAL Team 6 versus 6 Raptors. What happens? All right, cool. Right. We're already turning our brains off and eating popcorn at this point. Let's see some guns going off. And instead,
that would have improved the movie for sure. Yeah.
It couldn't have made it worse.
Okay. So we talked about the Raptors. Did you like or dislike the change in the Raptors, adding the feathers, making them more bird-like, their movements more bird-like? For or against?
I didn't mind the variety in Raptors. It didn't. I mean, I don't like that they changed the rules, right? We always talk about rules, and we all agree that it's best to kind of have some rules and stick to it. But I did like the look of them. I just wish we could have had that maybe throughout the franchise already, and then making the way they acted and talk and spoke was just ridiculous. Let's just go back to Jurassic Park 1 where they're hunting from the sides, and that's fun.
This is why we're such good friends, Ron, because I agree with everything you just said. If they'd had this look from Jurassic Park 1, cool. That's what Raptors look like. But changing it, like they have not evolved in the last 8 years to this stage. Now, our understanding of Raptors, from my limited understanding of paleontology, has changed drastically since Jurassic Park came out. So if you want to say now we believe that dinosaurs had feathers and more colorful skin, sure, I understand that. The movie was made in 93 with the science we had in 1993. But it doesn't make sense to me that the Raptors would have evolved over that short of a period of time, even though it would potentially make more sense for what we know of Raptors in 2001. You had Raptors in 93. They looked perfectly fine. Stick with that.
Yeah.
just to play devil advocate a little, because I know Dan likes to, so I'm gonna a little.
I think I know where you're going.
It was only the male raptors that had the feathers, and they were smaller and more colorful. The female was a little more muted and looked more like the original. And in the first movie, they somehow had reproduced in a very short time of evolution and or growth. So why couldn't they therefore evolve into a more masculine or more up-to-date dinosaur in 8 or 10 years?
You know what? That's not a bad point. I'll give you that. My counter argument would simply be
this movie sucked.
Not a little bit. You're not wrong. Yeah. My argument would be they used frog DNA, not bird DNA.
Right.
So they would evolve, if anything, like frogs would, not like birds would. That being said, this movie's stupid and just enjoy it for what it is. So
they do have the line, we don't know what they've been cooking up on this island because we saw a different dinosaur, the Spinosaurus or whatever they call that. Mm-hmm. We see a couple of other dinosaurs that we haven't seen before, like the pterodactyl on the poster right next to me. And so it could be that they were experimenting with cousins of the raptor or something like that. Or like you said, these are just males and they look different. And we haven't seen males until now, and they've all been clever girls.
Yeah, even that I'll accept a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just throwing it out as like, could it be plausible? Maybe. Sure. Does it make it work in this movie? Do they make it work in this movie? Not really.
Well, even what you said about they've been experimenting more, I hate that. But that is the direction this franchise goes. Like, if you've seen Jurassic World, they've made up a dinosaur by mixing genetics of 2 or 3 other dinosaurs to make the Indominus Rex. And if you've seen the trailer for the new one, Rebirth, there is a Frankenstein dinosaur there that I've never seen before. It looks freaking ridiculous. Have you guys seen the trailer for the new one yet?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah,
it
watched
so awful.
I watched some YouTuber guy do like oh, look, I'm watching trailers. Watch it with me thing.
You should make up your own mind. You should definitely watch it for yourself and make up your
You know what? The trailer is setting the bar really low for me on that movie, so maybe I'll go in and be pleasantly surprised. That's what I'm hoping.
Well,
and I'm gonna go in with a real low bar on it. So
now, correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't read the second book, but you have, Dan. But you said it's been a while.
It's been a long time.
I
remember enjoying it. I couldn't tell you much about it.
Yeah, isn't in Lost World that they're going to get eggs or something from the island, and like in Rebirth, they're like, oh, we're gonna like pull some DNA out of these guys for some medical thing. It's pretty ambiguous, but it feels like it's a ragtag crew going to get things more like in the Lost World than the Lost World was. The movie, like it seems like it's more closer to the book than the movie was.
I've heard things about Rebirth saying that it's going to be taking at least 1 or 2 scenes from the original book that fans have been clamoring for a long time that were not in Jurassic Park. It's been too long. I want to reread it, actually, now that we've been talking about it. I kind of want to reread the 2 books, but it's been so long since I've read them that I'm not sure what they're talking about. Anyways, let's get back to this movie. So,
yeah, I'd like to ask a question a little before we move on to anything else, going back to the look of this movie. I didn't like the special effects in this. I didn't like the practical effects, the animatronics, what little they used. And I thought that the special effects looked really like noticeably not lifelike. They looked clean. I couldn't tell the dinosaur apart from the background where it was imprinted over, but it didn't move or act right for me when they were trying to like nuzzle into like a shell or something to get at him or something. I was like, that doesn't look like a dinosaur. That looks like, I don't know. It almost looked like they had stop motion animation. It just looked terrible to me. I did not like the effects. Will, what did you think of the both the practical and the special effects here?
Yeah, compared to Jurassic Park and Lost World, I feel like this was a step back. They did do a full animatronic Spinosaurus. It was like at the time the biggest animatronic ever made. But it felt it was really janky in its movement, and even with the CGI over top of it, it came across like it just couldn't move because maybe it was just too big to be able to like have fluid motion within it. On top of that, I felt you could really tell that this movie had a lot of soundstage scenes, and that doesn't help with the believability at all either. or the immersion into the world. Whereas the other two movies, if there was any soundstage, it was very minimal, and you couldn't tell. You could see the vast world that they were in because they were actually in jungles and different places. Whereas this, there was like a few key shots of being out in a real place, but a lot of it was just like, oh, they're just on a soundstage acting with perfect lighting. And it really kind of takes you out of like, oh, they're really in this place, to me anyway. So I think it was a combination of the two problems that really took me out.
Okay, that really rings true with me, the way you talk about the big animatronic. The way it kind of moved, it was like, it was so big and clunky. That makes sense to me. And the soundstage bit as well. Yeah, you could tell. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I actually 100% agree on that one as well. That was one of the points that I had made, one of the few. Just this movie, not just the special effects, literally everything in this movie looked really bad by comparison to, especially Jurassic Park, but even Lost World, even just other movies at the time. Like, yeah, I remember that opening 100%. Scene with him flying with like the boat, and you're just like instantly hit, but like, this looks bad. Like, it just doesn't look very well shot. Like, the technology should be getting better on cameras, not worse. And yet it just, and not even like special effects. Again, just literally them walking through the jungle. It just didn't look very good to me. You eloquated it better, but you said it better than I did. But it's,
did you see the scene when they're paragliding in the beginning, and he's looking with his camera, and then he's like, "Hold on, let me get my knife out," and he puts his camera away just that fast. Like, just like he's got a holster for it or something. And I was like, where does camera go? Do I even want to know?
I legit thought he dropped it for a second.
Yeah, but then he brings it back out. So yeah.
Oh, I know, but it was that fast. It was just like,
yeah. And then they looked like they were dangling on lines in a soundstage with wind being blown at them while they like wiggle. It was really terrible. All these sequences, they looked so bad to me. I didn't like it.
Yeah. Agreed. I'm having trouble throwing out positives. Have we thrown out any positives? I
liked like a couple of lines.
Yeah,
there was like some dialogue I enjoyed. There was a couple of plots that didn't come out well, but I liked the idea of them.
The only things I liked were not supposed to be things that I liked. Like the cheesy sequence when they look over and there's the Spinosaurus watching them. And I'm like, that's really dumb. That's why I'm enjoying it. It's so dumb that I'm laughing at this.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it came down to, is that I was like, oh, forget this. This is ridiculous. And that's the only way I could really enjoy it.
Yeah,
the pterodactyl scenes and flying through the air with his parachute that he throws at. It's just so over the top, ridiculous, and ill positioned, poorly executed. I liked it because it was so bad. That's the only enjoyment I really got out of it.
I was harping hard on like how fast paced this movie is, and like it's by far the shortest movie. I think it's like an hour and a half, and all the others are over 2 hours. That was one of the redeeming qualities of this movie. It was over quickly.
It's pretty bad. Put it on the poster. Jurassic Park 3. It's short.
And they had the sequence at the end when they're riding the boat out, the boat that they found. And now everything else falls apart when they step on it or a dinosaur nudges it. But this boat that's been sitting at the bottom of the river for God knows how long still runs just fine, and they're like driving it out of there. I didn't really like how they tried to play up the epic music, and hey, look, there's the big beautiful dinosaurs once again
for like 3 seconds, and there's like, instead of like one like herd of Brachiosaurus, it's like 17 different types of dinosaurs all like walking along.
All the good ones there in this epic scene. I was like, come on.
That lasts like 10 seconds.
Wasn't even like a Brachiosaurus or Brontosaurus or something that like came right in on the camera to like look at them.
Yeah.
Some part of my brain honestly thought, for the movie that we're in, it's going to attack them. You know what I mean? Like it's also gonna, or it's gonna drink the water and like disturb the boat. Something about this is even gonna be menacing, because that's just the overall theme of this movie, is like everything wants to kill you.
Well, I gotta tell you guys, I think after watching this, because I completely forgot about how bad this movie was, but after watching this, I understand why the next movie is called Jurassic World. They needed to rebrand to get away from this hot mess.
Yeah.
Also, they changed the logo, and go F yourself for that. Like, seriously.
You mean the Spinosaurus on this one?
They put the Spinosaurus head on instead of the T-Rex, just adding insult to injury. Like, okay, it's fine that there's other big dinosaurs out there. That doesn't mean we are just going to forgive you for offing the T-Rex and just pretending it's nothing.
I think, like Brian said, it was the Spinosaurus and the T-Rex were in a fight. I kind of feel the opposite way. I feel like they were very much saying, like, no, the Spinosaurus is even bigger and even badder. The fact that it just like grabs the T-Rex and just like breaks its neck pretty instantly. It's just like, okay, so this is supposed to be the apex predator. You're supposed to be more afraid of this. It's like, I feel like the T-Rex was scary enough and people knew what it was, but like, okay.
This is the same problem we had in the Predator movie where they had the big predator. It was like, the Predator's already scary enough. You don't need to make him bigger. You don't need to go bigger. If you rely on good writing, good scripting, good acting, this movie plays out well. They didn't have any of that, and so they tried to up the ante by making a bigger dinosaur.
Yeah. And same problem. All the Alien movie had it too, right? They always have to try and introduce something bigger and badder at the end. You're like, no, aliens are terrifying. Just that's enough. It's fine.
Actually, the smaller ones were more scary, right? We all think the face huggers were the most scary.
That was the best part of Romulus.
Exactly. Sure. Also, I know for a fact the T-Rex legit got the neck of that Spinosaurus first and would have destroyed it with its bite force. No question in my mind. The T-Rex won that fight. They just screwed the audience because they wanted a bigger, badder dinosaur. So right out the gate, it's a bad taste in my mouth, and I can't forgive that.
All right, well, shall we go ahead and rate this one? I think this was going to come in under an hour, but honestly, I don't have much more to say.
Let's be done with this. Hey, shorter's better. Just like the movie. Shorter's better.
I feel like when we were talking about Prometheus, there was enough interesting conversation going on that like an hour and a half runtime makes sense. Just shitting on this one for an hour and a half just feels wrong. I think 45 minutes is probably all we really need for this one.
Yeah, we watched to dig through shit in the movie. We don't need to keep doing it here.
100 agree, because Prometheus brought big questions to the board. This one didn't, right? It brought little questions of like, does the raptors actually have more intelligence than we first thought? Oh, interesting, but just not well thought out or executed.
I actually just realized, as much as we're saying this movie is just like dialed up to 11, even the scene where they're going through poop, they're going through 3 piles of poop instead of 1 pile of poop. Like everything is just dialed up. Like I didn't need it. Sure. All right. This cell phone's made of corn. Fine. It makes it through fine.
And not to mention the other dinosaur that walks up, smells the poop, and was like, I'm out of here.
You people are gross.
Not my kink. I'm out. Yeah, so stupid. But whatever. Oh, let's rate this bad boy.
Well, I think you're the only one that actually has a score, so let's you go first.
Oh, I got my score.
Okay.
All right. What have we not said about this movie? We've said everything. It's short and sweet. That's the only sweet part of this movie. They destroyed the T-Rex, which is just a terrible thing to do. Everybody loves the T-Rex for a reason. It doesn't have to be the main character, but that doesn't mean you have to just destroy it. It's just insult for no reason. I like the idea of Eric being able to survive on this island. Is it believable? Not really, especially with the, how did you get the dino pee? You don't want to know. Like, there was just like very little going on to like actually give him reason to survive for as long as he did alone. Whatever. It was a very simple plot, not well executed. I feel like even the scoring in this movie, they used very little John Williams because he was unavailable. Surprise, surprise. Steven Spielberg ruining this movie even more. He had John Williams working on AI, artificial intelligence, while this movie was being filmed. So they couldn't even get John Williams to do proper scoring. So instead they hired some other guy, Don Davis, I think, who's a good composer, but just literally sped up the theme from the original. So it's just like, just make everything faster. And so I'm going to be fast and give this movie a 56 out of 100, which I think is pretty lenient because I love dinosaurs. And you get a lot of dinosaurs in this movie. They're just not as good. And I would never watch this over Jurassic Park. Just watch Jurassic Park. It's barely watchable.
You're okay. You're not wrong.
All right. For this movie, it was not fun for me to watch. When I realized I had seen it before, I realized why I didn't remember it. It's because I didn't want to remember it. I, like Will, was somewhat insulted by the way they treated dinosaurs, the way the dinosaurs got changed. They broke the rules with the raptor that they set out for themselves. They had to make these adjustments that they couldn't pull off. Rarely in movies can you make adjustments to the rules that you set and are able to pull it off. This movie didn't even try to do it very well. The plot was flimsy. They paid some top tier actors to try and cover it, but of course they couldn't pull this up by its bootstraps. They couldn't carry it. I felt the direction of this, I didn't even know where they were going. Like there were like 3 different kind of sub themes, no real character development. It was the effects of this movie were the worst in the series so far, and really not good for the time that this movie was made. Doesn't hold up very well. The scoring, like Will said, it was just the same song sped up. It was nothing new. It didn't even seem like it played at the right times. Sometimes when they do the big epic sounds, it just didn't come out at the right times. I didn't even have that much fun watching it. I watched it with my kids. Even they were kind of upset when the T-Rex got brought down. They're like, what? And they weren't all that excited. Maybe the pterodactyl scene when they're flying through the air, my kids were excited and I was excited to watch them. But it was distracting for me to watch the TV and see just how ridiculous some of the stupid ideas they had with, the parachute flying through the air and all this stuff that just didn't make sense. For me, if a movie is rated 50 or below, I say don't watch it. It's not a good movie. Anything above 50 is maybe worth your time. But that 50 point is the break point for me. This movie came in at 47. I don't think it's a good movie. And I think if you can avoid watching it, you're better off. Like Will said, go back and watch Jurassic Park, the first movie.
Jurassic Park, for me, most of the magic was in the fact that they treated the audience with respect. They treated you intelligently, and you left that movie thinking that what happened in the film could happen in real life. It felt plausible to an extent. Now, obviously, we were younger when we saw that one. There are flaws in it if you want to point them out. But for the most part, the movie, the people creating it, treated you with respect. And I feel like that is the number one thing missing in this movie. It feels like it was rushed together. It feels like it treats the audience like they're stupid. It is just for quick popcorn film, just to get a quick buck, and it feels that on the screen. It looks bad. It doesn't sound very good. The acting is okay, and that's the best part of it. The plot is nonsensical, and all of this leads to my enjoyment of this one being really quite low. If everything in Jurassic Park was good and everything in Lost World was turned up to 11, everything in this was just them banging pots and pans together and hoping that it made enough noise that you would pay attention and watch this. And honestly, you shouldn't. I went actually even lower than the other 2 guys because I feel like they were just insulting to me. They were insulting to the dinosaurs and they're insulting to the audience overall. I gave this one a 42. Is it watchable? Technically. Should you? No. And that's a really bad sign for me. Going from a 100 with the first Jurassic Park to a failing 42 with this one just shows you how far the bar has fallen on this franchise. And I'm hoping that with the Jurassic World, we can pick it up again, at least to watchable, if not to high heights that the series started off with. So with that, this franchise drops pretty hard because this was in the top place when we did this. This was at I think it was an 80 before this. This one dropped pretty hard to a 69. You guys are not both red anymore. Brian, you should be red, and Will, you should be white. I apologize. I'll change that afterwards. But
It's all good.
This feels unfortunately about right. If you look at just Jurassic Park, I feel like it should be pretty high to the top of this list, if not the top of this list. But with the addition of 2 and 3, dropping below Predator, Mad Max, Alien just feels right to me. Do you guys feel okay with this? Or are you a little upset that it's still over top of Evil Dead and other movies on this list?
This looks okay to me. I mean, Predator, Mad Max, Alien, they all have a lot more movies to pull from, so you can get a lot more good and bad and average it out. This has 3 movies, so it's going to have some high highs and low lows in those 3 movies. Unfortunately, the lows just kind of drop that high hard and fast.
And did we decide we're going to put Jurassic Park all one big franchise?
We don't know.
I was still leaning towards putting them as 2 separate franchises. They do have separate names. They're in the same universe, but they are different. But I mean, I'm not gonna pull rank or anything. If you guys are both like, no, let's just make it all one thing. So be it. But
I'm good either way. I believe the addition of Jurassic World into these three, making 6-7 movie total, will probably lift the score up above like the Predator, or maybe even one above that.
It's possible.
It's possible. It's possible. I don't think it'll drop it.
Movies.
I don't think it'll drop it much.
My thought that I literally just thought of, if you're looking at this list and you've not seen before, I could see you not knowing if Jurassic Park includes those movies or if it's just the first three. Whereas if you can see Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, you know instantly what you're looking at. That's not a great argument, but
no, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's sad to me that this movie tanks the franchise so badly. And like Will says, if we included all of them, it would bring it back up to where I think the franchise belongs. I don't think the franchise belongs as low as it does, simply because of the original Jurassic Park movie. I think
tried real hard to bring it up as high as I could.
Yeah.
Is this a case? Let me ask you this. Is this a case of this never should have been a franchise?
100%.
I think that they did the franchise poorly. I think right from the jump, they did the franchise poorly. The first movie is too good for them to not capitalize on it. When a movie makes that much money, they're gonna make a sequel.
No, I agree with that. Like, this is why you got a slow score.
Movies.
You guys keep throwing out the term popcorn movie. I think your popcorn movie is too broad a spectrum here. This one, no.
When I say a popcorn movie, I just mean like your brain is off and you're just shoveling food in your face, and it's just this is what's on in front of you.
Enjoying the spectacle.
Yeah, but I'm not saying this is a good.
This is a Debbie's Hostess cake movie. You watch this when you really feel bad about yourself and want to punish yourself, and you're eating your feelings. Save the popcorn for something you can enjoy. This is trash.
All right, and that's our take on Jurassic Park 3. Were we way too harsh on this movie? Were there parts of it that you really enjoyed that we didn't discuss? Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Other than that, we record this live on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. on twitch.tv/The Mongoolie Show. So head over there and hit the follow button if you want to hang out with us live. Or if you made it this far in the video, hit the like button. You probably enjoyed it if you made it this far. And hit subscribe so you know when more great content like this goes out. We're going to be doing the Anchorman series after this one, so stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I hope you're safe, I hope you're well, and we'll catch you in the next video.